However, things tend to go to plan. Right up until they...
Whoa! Hey everyone, how's it going? Eric here, and you know what's really exciting? Every time that we walk away from one of these Nindie showcase events that they have, I get to take a deeper look at some of these Nindie games. And what's again exciting about that is that they're never what they seem at the surface level. When I walked away from the Red Lantern, which is what we're diving into today, I did not expect the type of game that this actually is. And now diving deeper into it, I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, I can see where this is going. It's not just another story-driven narrative game. This is doing something a little different. It's still, other games have done it before, but it's got its own style to it, and I love that. Speaking of style, the trailer really does have a certain style to it, doesn't it? Yeah, that's Firewatch. Everyone kind of walked away from this, or most people who know what Firewatch is going, that looks like Firewatch. Because the art style, first of all, yeah, kind of has that reminiscence of Firewatch in there. And then when you kind of go a little bit deeper and you listen to the narration, you're like, yeah, okay, this is definitely giving me even more Firewatch vibes. I don't think it's going to be right on par with Firewatch though. I think it's going to get a little degree of separation there. Actually, you know what? I think there's going to be a huge degree of separation, but the degree of separation that I'm talking about is with the narration. And what I mean by that is that, well, Firewatch, I didn't actually play it, but I've seen a little bit of it being played. But a lot of it's done over walkie-talkies and talking to each other or talking to someone else over a radio. Now this, you're just gonna be talking to your dogs. Your dogs is kind of your only company there. And so it's gonna be a lot of kind of talking to yourself. I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know how it's gonna play out, but it's definitely gonna play out differently than Firewatch did.
I've got a plan. Get a van, fill it with dogs, go to Alaska, race in the Iditarod dog sled race, and finish.
That art style though really does lend itself well to this kind of wilderness, doesn't it? Like when you see the sunsets and the sunrises and the whatever comes in between sunset and sunrise. The nighttime, there's nighttime as well. And I think that's really cool. Like when you get your torchlight out and then you see a bear attack and that's horrifying, but everything else in between is really cool. Oh, and the aurora borealis that we see in the sky. Yeah, I don't know. I think just the art style looks really cool. It may not look the most beautiful when you get up close to something, but as far as suiting this style of game, I think it suits it really well. Now, I do want to go back and touch on that story a little bit because we talked about the narration, but the narration sets up the story of basically you're completing in this thing called the Iditarod race, which is, you know, I don't need to go over it again, but it's basically just a bobsled race. And yeah, it's not a bobsled, it's a dog sled. However, we're not actually in that race. They do mention this a little bit in the direct, but you might get confused. I got confused first of all and thought that we were competing in the race. Now we're just training to compete in the race. We're doing kind of a practice run of it by the looks of it. We're not actually competing in the race per se. But it is really interesting competing in this race to kind of better ourselves because it reminds me a little bit of another story that you might know at home. Celeste. Does this not remind you of Celeste? Because Celeste kind of climbed the mountain because she wasn't happy with her life and she wanted to do something about it. So she went and climbed a mountain. This seems to be the same type of thing. I'm not happy with my life. I'm going to do something about it by doing something reckless and going and doing this bobsledding thing. Dog sled, Eric. God, how many times are we going to have to go over this? But I think what I love about this story is it just kind of, it speaks to me. I don't know, it probably speaks to everyone, but it really speaks to me the way it's just like,
hi, I'm a disappointment.
Same. As much as I love this story and what it's doing, it does have me racking my head going, how is this gonna tie into gameplay? And that's the biggest question for me. How is this going to tie into gameplay? Because gameplay, like I mentioned at the start, it's not what I'm expecting. That's because the gameplay is described as a rogue-lite. Now, they didn't actually mention this in the direct, but it somehow completely passed my mind or passed my ears, and I didn't hear it. So going back and watching this, I'm like, okay, how is this, even like knowing that now, going back and watching this, I'm like, how is this a rogue-lite? Explain. And doing a little bit of digging here, it turns out the events that happen, so probably the bear event where you lose a dog, may he rest in peace. And actually many other events, which we'll go into in a second, but all these events, they're not made to happen in just like a set path type thing. It's not just one direction that you're gonna go. As you go through the story, you're gonna be like, okay, here's the bear event will just randomly happen. And now this event where you fall off a cliff will randomly happen. And now this event where maybe you have to make some sort of other decision will randomly happen. All of these events are just gonna happen and you've just gotta deal with them and choose the best outcome. And a really interesting statement that I'm just gonna lift straight from Polygon here actually reads, in the Red Lantern, the player will set out on the Iditarod again and again, most often failing. Now, most often failing, you know what that means to me? is that, well, a lot of these outcomes are going to lead to a fail state. So obviously the bear attacks, you lose one dog, but it seems there's going to be many situations where you might lose dogs, you might lose other stuff. You know, frostbite can happen to you. You might not have enough rations. There's all these different things that are going to lead to fail states, that lead to you not making it to the end. And in that way, a comparison that I keep hearing coming up after reading a lot of this stuff is that it's kind of similar to Faster Than Light, or FDL is probably a lot of people know it as. And so that means every playthrough is going to be its own unique story on how you get through it. Of course, there is an overarching story that you're trying to get through, but each playthrough is going to end up differently for how it actually plays out. Some of the situations that might play out, obviously we've already seen. I mentioned the bear, which I don't need to mention again, but also you'll notice that there's meds on board, there's rifle bullets, there's meat. All of this is because we're obviously going to have to feed our dog, we have to go hunting, we have to do all these different things to be able to survive. And we're going to have to make decisions whether should we shoot that reindeer thing that's up on the hill, or should we save our bullet for the occasional bear attack that might happen? Should we choose to keep traveling at night so that we can hopefully get a safer spot to rest, or should we rest out in the open during the day at a bigger risk overnight? And it seems that some of the decisions might not even be that decisions. They might just be stuff that you have to react to. Like, well, when the bear swipes you, I'm guessing you can probably duck under that claw. And then even when the dogs are getting attacked, don't laugh at that. May he rest in peace. You can probably shoot your gun quick enough then that the dog doesn't jump in the way and try to save you. Which means that dog dying is on you. You let a dog die, I'm not going to be happy. So obviously there's going to be lots of interactions, and that's what's going to make this game. Even the, as they quote, receiving a signature moose licking is going to be an event. So I'm looking forward to that one the most, probably. Now, don't let all that roguelite stuff that I've been talking about take away from the fact that this game is still going to have a good overarching story. Like, even going off the quote on the website here, which says, we're a small team of narrative game veterans sharing an office with a small team of dogs. I mean, the dog things aside, they're narrative game veterans. So obviously they're creating a narrative game here, and it's got to have an overarching story, and especially with that voice acting, which is just godlike. I have to put the voice actor's name somewhere in this because apparently they've done other work, which is really good. But yeah, that voice acting just makes this game. And so obviously they're going to have some sort of focus there on the narrative. Actually, just before I move on, I will quickly say, if you watch the trailer again, you'll probably notice some of those decisions making that you're probably going to have to make. Like, at one point you would see in the direct, they choose between two different paths, so you can either go left or go right. And they take the right path, which seems to be between a rocky crevice, so who knows what the decision actually that had to be made there was. But I have a feeling that decisions like that are just going to play out all the time. Like, you'll probably be sledding along, she would say something in her head like, this path leads to this, or this path leads to this, and you simply steer which way you want to go. However, I don't think you're going to have direct control over the actual sled itself. I think it's more going to be controlling itself, and you're just going to be like, you know, you tilt it left or right to go through there. You're not actually going to be like, all right, let's go dodge through some random trees out this way. They mentioned gyro controls in the trailer, so for those of you who like to tilt your system to actually look around, personally, I'm not a huge fan of the old gyro controls, so I'll probably just play it normally, so hopefully there's an option to turn that on and off, but I think I'll just play it normally. But for those who want to get immersed into the game, this does add immersion, actually, be able to feel like the actual feedback from you tilting and steering. And like I said, if you're not in direct control of your bobsleigh sled thing dogcraft, I think that's going to be really cool. Last of all, the game's website does say it's coming out in summer 2019. However, they just said 2019 in the direct, so take whatever one you want there. I don't know when it's coming out. I think that's going to do it for today, but do tell me what you're thinking about the Red Lantern. I'd love to hear your thoughts, as well as don't forget, if you made it this far in the video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, be greatly appreciated. And you can remember, for great Nintendo entertainment, you can count on me. For today's end screen, I do want to quickly mention that I'm looking into how to do streaming. I don't know anything about doing streaming in the first place, but some of you have requested that in the past, and it's something that I do want to actually dip into at some stage, but I'm not 100% sure how, like I mentioned, and my HD60, whatever it's called, Elgato, has a few problems. Like, it records, but like, for some reason, it just stops recording randomly after like 20 or 30 minutes, so I gotta see if that actually does that with streaming as well, if it's just recording, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, and just, I don't know, thought I'd let you know. Goodbye!